Recently, we did some travel running, mostly travel and some running. Well, in my case, the point was to travel and then I did some running. In Liam's case, the point of the traveling was to run. So,
A little bit
I'll,
of traveling.
yeah, lots of running and a little bit of traveling. So I took a brief trip to Tokyo. I was there for 8 days. I did zero runs and one hike. So I did a nice day hike in there's mountains around Tokyo, like closer than Fuji. So I did a day hike kind of on the outskirts of Tokyo, and that was the first hike I had done in a while actually, which is running adjacent. And it was a little bit different. The first part was quite steep, so it's more cardio than running, I find. Running, it's not really cardio anymore. It's mostly legs at a certain point. Like at first, you might need to get your cardiorespiratory system used to it, but um, after a certain point, mostly comes down to how long your legs can hold out, and then you're just working your cardio system. And then I also did a 4 day trip to Hainan. That's the southernmost island of China, and it's actually more to the south. I was in Sanya, which is the southernmost city of the southernmost island. So it's actually more to the south than the northern part of Vietnam. So Sanya is a few degrees latitude lower than Hanoi. And I was there for a work thing, and which makes it sound like it ruins it, but the whole purpose of the work thing was to just bond with the other people that we work with that we often never see. So there was actually no work involved. We didn't do any meetings or anything like that. It was just fun stuff, kind of like a trip together. And yeah, that was great. And Hainan is beautiful. It's awesome for running. We went in December and it was like 27 degrees during the day. And then at night it was maybe still above 10, like 14, 15. Yeah, so beautiful subtropical climate. And they have beaches there. I found a running route along one of the main strips of beach. It turned out to be 7 kilometers, so I did 3 trips total, half marathon. And my colleagues thought I was crazy. Like, you're on a vacation and you decide to go spend the morning running. You're crazy, man. Why don't you just lay in bed for the morning? But yeah, that was great and great scenery. If you're ever in Hainan, it's a great place to run. There's not a lot of running there. Really just that one strip where you have a route. But this it's a tourist city, right? So it's pretty quiet. There's no industry or anything like that. There's no big trucks, so you can just run around the city. They do have at least one marathon in Sanya that I know of. There's one on New Year's Eve actually, where you start at night and you go into the next year. Yeah, so that's my running update. Liam has way more than that, so I'll hand it over to him.
Well, first I have a question about that. You said
Mhm.
the purpose of your trip, I guess your work trip was to bond. So were you
Yeah.
able to bond with any of your colleagues over running?
Uh, I do have one colleague who's kind of just getting into running, and she's in Hangzhou. So we have a Beijing team and a Hangzhou team, and she just did a half marathon pretty recently and finished with 2 hours 14 minutes, which is pretty good. And they had like at their headquarters, which is actually the main headquarters, they had a 5 kilometer mini marathon pretty recently, and she got third
Okay.
place for the women's. So we talked about running, but it's really hard to persuade anyone to actually go running, especially when it's like, I think I left at 6:30 in the morning. Like, no, 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 no. Yeah, that was the only time slot we had. So yeah, they're not quite as obsessed, but getting there. I can sometimes persuade someone to go out on a run with me.
Oh, well, it's good to have someone if you need the company. Glad
Yeah.
glad they appreciate running at least.
All right, let's hear about
Great.
your
Well,
trip.
one day, oh yeah, so mine. So for me, I spent about 2 weeks in Hanoi and 2 weeks in Ho Chi Minh City.
Okay.
And for me, every time I visited Vietnam, every weekend, I've tried to find a race and registered for one. Once I didn't because I had to go to a wedding, but other than that, every weekend I've ever been in Vietnam, I've always signed up for a race. The problem is, well, not really a problem, but an extra challenge is I often arrive on the weekend. So like this time, I arrived Saturday morning about 10 a.m. and at midnight they call it the VN Express Hanoi Midnight Run. So at midnight, the 5K started, and the marathon started at 1 a.m., which I signed up for. So I was in the country for about 14 hours, and I was already on the start line, dressed up, ready to go. And it was at midnight. Well, okay, 1 a.m., but midnight run. And I've never done a run like this before
Hmm.
because it's not really like we've talked before about in Southeast Asia, it's common to wake up very early for a run. But for midnight, it's more like you're going to stay up until you start. And so, of course, I was pretty tired. And that started to hit me in the middle because it was around Hanoi in a beautiful part of the city, um, which is normally beautiful. But we went around the Long Bin area. If anyone's been around there, it's quite nice, except at 2 or 3 in the morning when no one's around and you're passing construction workers just working. And then you're passing like, I guess, residential areas and there's water stations and you have to be like, thank you for the water, thank you. And it feels like you're not supposed to talk much when we think of marathons and races. There's lots of cheering and excitement. So that was very weird. And but it was still very enjoyable. I had a great time. I also was very fortunate because at the race expo, there was a Huawei smartwatch like booth, and they had a really old rickety treadmill that just did not look safe. It was not a normal treadmill. It was old and shaking, and they said whoever can record the fastest time on this watch in a minute will get a free watch. And all the fast people, I guess they were already resting because it was just a few hours before the race. Um, and it was very rickety. So if you're going for a good time in the marathon, you probably don't want to risk it with this sketchy treadmill. And so I said, okay, I'll try it. And they said 1 minute. And I found out the timer on the treadmill was wrong. And it actually cut you off at 40 seconds. So before you reach your top pace, it cut you off
Hmm.
early. So anyways, I tried it and did not do very well. I maybe my fastest time in that pace was like 4 minutes, 30 seconds, which for a 1 minute
Wow.
just all out sprint is not very fast. Um, I guess it like I think, okay, fastest 100 meters and I run 100 meters. I guess I'm not a minute, but for anyways, 4 minutes, 30-second pace was not that fast, I thought. So I get back to my hotel, gonna take a maybe 2 hour nap before the race, and I got a call saying, "Hey, you want to watch?" And I said, "What?" And I was very lucky, so I got to go back, and I won a smartwatch, and I've been smartwatchless for about 2 years now, because my old Apple Watch didn't connect to my new phone. So I was very happy about that. And I'm still learning the features. But yeah, I was able to use that. The first run was the race. So that was very exciting to do during the race. And I enjoyed the midnight run with my brand new free smartwatch. So that was a great successful first race.
You haven't even started the race and you've already won something.
But exactly. Yeah, usually even if I finished the race, I wouldn't have won. But yeah, so whatever happens in the race, I guess, well, I had to finish because if I didn't finish, I would feel like I betrayed them, or if I didn't start, I'd feel like a criminal. So that was my motivation to do as well as I could.
Did they only give out one watch?
I think they gave out a few. So I'm also kind of curious because I I made an effort to speak as much Vietnamese as possible and tried to avoid English. So I'm thinking maybe they had a few to give out, and I said, okay, this guy he's he looks a bit different. He has a dinosaur costume, which looks very different, and he's willing to speak Vietnamese. Maybe this could be good promotion for our company. Maybe they thought that because, as I mentioned, 4 minutes 30 seconds for a top speed in 1 minute is not that fast. So maybe that was one of their criteria for giving the watch. But regardless, I'm very fortunate.
And you mentioned that it was a very quiet midnight run. Mm, were you super exhausted after that? You probably finished at like 6 a.m., right?
Wait, yeah, I definitely. I'm quite tired after many races, but yeah, this one especially in the middle, around 20 to 30K. There's just no one in that area. You're in a part of the city, there's just not many people. and it's very brutal. But then we got back to the city around 30K, and it started to pick up a bit as there were some people still outside of bars, like enjoying their night, and we passed. And I was a dinosaur, so people were happy to see me. I also saw a vitamin box, and this man definitely got sponsored. He had a huge, like, kind of like a juice box costume that I guess some kids in elementary school might make if anyone's ever seen one of those. But it was a vitamin box with the company's info, just like the actual pills, like the real box, just big enough for him to wear while he runs. And at nighttime, he really went all out. He had lights around it so you could still read it. So he hit the switch and it was just boom, lit up like neon lights around, really promoting this company. So I thought, wow, I need to contact them and try and get on that. So my goal was just to beat the light box or the vitamin box guy because there's another costume. So I just have to beat the costume wearer.
Right. Mm. And if you get the name of the vitamin company, maybe you can reach out to them and they can sponsor you. I wonder how much that guy got
Yeah,
paid to do.
that's a good point. For the rest of my trip, every time I saw a costume, not related to running, just at a store, I thought, oh, I wrote down the name. I'll send them all messages so maybe they can pay for my next trip to Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay, next race.
Right. So the next race was just a 10K. So a long time, no 10K, I might say. It's been quite a while since I've run 10 kilometers. It was 1 week later, also in Hanoi. It was in the West Lake area, which is
Mm.
a nice place to run. It's a very, very small event. So
Mm.
it was for a fundraiser, part of like a week or a month of different events, trying to raise money to help victims of domestic violence. So a good cause. Um, but the focus of this company was not running. So there were a few challenges that I
Mm.
guess someone very serious about running could get frustrated over. For example, the map that they uploaded online, the words start and turnaround point were reversed on the map. So I went to the turnaround point 20 minutes before the run and I said, "Oh, excuse me, I see you're setting up some water, but I know this is a small race, but I can't be the only person here." And they said, "No, this is the turnaround point." I said, "What?" Thankfully, it was about 2 kilometers away. So my warm up was, I was not wearing my dinosaur costume yet. I was holding it, but I sprinted there. And this one started about 6 a.m. or 6:30, so relatively late for a Southeast Asia run. But I got there in time and had a great run, just 10K. Yeah, not very many people. And I started near the back because I'm a dinosaur. Why would I think about getting a good pace? But that warm up was actually pretty good, and Hanoi was not that hot then, so I actually
Mm.
went pretty fast compared to my expectations, and I came fifth or sixth overall.
Oh wow.
And yeah, didn't expect that. So if I started at the beginning of the pack, it's possible I could have gotten closer to fourth or maybe third, and they gave out like bags of cookies to the top three places. So I was a bit disappointed I didn't go all out. But I still had lots of fun, helped raise some money for a great cause, and yeah, really enjoyed running a race that finishes in less than an hour, which is not something I've done in quite some time.
The climate in Hanoi is pretty good for running, especially this time of year. They don't really have winter. It's just the dry season, so it's not super hot and it doesn't usually rain.
Right,
Did you go around Westlake or at least around part of it? I think it's about 14 kilometers for a full lap.
right. That's a good question. So we were in a less busy part of it, and just there and back. So the map
Oh,
said we start in the middle, 2K, about 2.5K back, 2.5K back. So like out and back to the west and out and back to the east, which is kind of confusing. But the map online was completely not the race was. It was completely 5K to the west and 5K back. So just straight out and back.
mm,
Um, and so for someone who takes running very seriously and competitively, it was not a big event, but that could have been a little bit frustrating because the map, not just the words, the map itself was completely different than the actual course. But
yeah.
yeah, we had a just around the west, not around full lake, but out and back. And it was small, so they didn't block off any kind of traffic. And if you've ever been to Vietnam,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
you don't know. Yeah.
Wow, that makes it like a an obstacle course where if you take a wrong step, basically like Squid Game obstacle course.
Yeah, yeah, basically. It was near, I guess, a less, like I mentioned, a less busy part of the West Lake. But it was kind of nice. A couple moments where there was the perfect amount of traffic jam where the motorbike in front of me was going at the perfect speed to be a pacer. So I thought, oh man, I am Kipchoge right now. Like I got these pacers all around me in formation. If you just minus the exhaust coming out of the
Yeah.
vehicles, and
Um, and did they section any of the road off at all with pylons or anything? Or just like that's the way to go,
not
you're
at
on your
all.
own?
They had volunteers every turn, which is quite a lot of turns in that area. So lots of volunteers on the way.
Yeah.
Um, but that was it. And like I mentioned, I was near the front of the pack. So 5 and 10K started at the same time. 5K is, of course, 2.5 out and back. 10K is 5K out and back. So once the 5K started to turn around, I didn't know how many people were in front of me. And since there were only 3 or 4 people in front of me, um, it was kind of separated and I couldn't see anyone for most of it. So it doesn't look like an official sanctioned run for just the normal passerbys and the normal passersby. And they just saw this weird dinosaur playing a flute as he's running, and it could have been very confusing. But hey, people were happy to see me. I was happy to see them, and the whole run I kept thinking, am I lost? Am
Mm.
I on the wrong track? So that was a bit tough.
I find with those kind of ghetto runs, you really have to have a different state of mind. Like if you're going for personal best or if you want to get a certain time or anything like that, and something like that happens, like you don't know where to go or you don't know if you're going the right way, or even if you go the wrong way, then you have to circle back. It can be really frustrating. But if you just don't care as much, then it can still be fun. It's a different kind of experience, right? Like if you get frustrated about that kind of thing, then maybe not do that kind of race, but you do it for different reasons, right? Were there other foreigners there?
Yeah, yeah, there was a few. So yeah, and yeah,
Okay.
like you said, this was not really competitive. Like at other races, still have many foreigners whose full-time jobs is competing in international races. This one didn't have cash prizes, so the
Yeah.
foreigners were just living there, traveling, and just there for fun, completely for fun.
You can tell because the prize for the top three places is cookies.
Exactly. And actually, I
That's a
still
dead
got a
giveaway.
prize of cookies. They made a
They
new
still give you some
prize just
cookies
for
just
me.
for effort.
Yeah, at the end they said, "Oh, no, I got macarons," and they said, "And some cookies." So we have an extra prize for the best dressed,
They
and
made up a prize just for you.
and um, I guess yeah, it's very common. I guess if you've done a run in Vietnam, many people, maybe 90% of people wear the same race shirt on the race day, and there's just not much variety in terms of outfits. So in this case,
Mm.
probably 95% to 99% of people were wearing the race shirt. So they said best dressed, and I thought, oh no,
Only differently dressed.
it's obvious. And then they asked me to give a little speech, and um, which was difficult because, as I mentioned, it was a fundraiser to help victims of domestic violence. And the speakers before that, some of them gave very kind of sad stories about experiences of people they know. And suddenly there's this giant dinosaur, sweaty and smelly, asked to give another extra speech to buy time. And I thought, oh, well, I don't want to look like I'm mocking anything, which I'm not trying to do, but
I just always
I
dress
did
like
look a bit
this.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Okay, last but not least is Ho Chi Minh.
Right. Yes. So after that, I went to Ho Chi Minh City. I signed up for 2 races in the south. One unfortunately got canceled, so I only did one. But the one I did, it was the Techcom Bank Marathon, which I've been told is the biggest official marathon in Vietnam. I don't know if that's completely true. Maybe they're just trying to make themselves sound more important, but it was a very, very big marathon. 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon. Very, very interesting course and a very definitely very enjoyable experience. If I have the time, I would love to do that one again, and I would definitely recommend that one to anyone who has the time and the opportunity.
I think I did Sacom Bank in January.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of the good season in Ho Chi Minh as well. And that one was huge too. So if it's bigger than that one, then That's pretty damn big. And
right?
the crowd's so
Uh,
awesome in Vietnam, right? So enthusiastic.
oh yeah, yeah, it's
Like,
great, and yeah,
every
um,
country has a different vibe for the crowd. I find
great.
with Vietnamese marathons, there's just so much energy. They're just so genuinely excited. It's great.
Right. I've noticed that maybe this is just a prediction, an assumption, but maybe because in general traffic is very kind of confusing, or people do a lot of weaving in and out already. When a road gets blocked for a marathon in Vietnam, I don't see people getting angry and like trying to fight the organizers. But in,
Hmm.
I guess, a few times here in Seoul, they've blocked the main streets and businesses can't get their delivery cars past. And I see people almost willing to like they want to fight the police blocking the road. They say, "Are you going to take responsibility for my business losses?" And it's very, of
Hmm.
course, very disrupting for the business, and it makes me feel bad as a runner for just for participating. But in Vietnam, like you said, I've only had positive vibes, and of course in Seoul, I've had lots of positive vibes too. But yeah, the overall atmosphere from both runners, people coming to cheer, as well as just people on their way to work who see us, all super positive and
Yeah.
really happy. And so that's great. And this one of the highlights of this race, as I mentioned, there's a 5K, 10K, half and full. I was running the full, and each one starts about an hour apart. And there's so many people, and they designed the courses differently. So there's one point where all four courses are running together. And so the full, we go out and back for the first about 21K. And then around the 16-kilometer mark, something like that, we
Hmm.
match up with the half marathon, who has now run about 6 or 7 kilometers. So the elites are ahead. Now it's just kind of the people at the back of the pack for half marathon, or in the middle at this point, maybe. And so we catch up with them and we're running with them. So you kind of have to judge your pace. Like, oh, the people around me, their bibs are different. And shortly
Hmm.
after that, I see more people turning into our road. And then the 10K joins us and the 5K. And then there's just so
Interesting.
many people. But yeah, it's very different. And once again, for people who are very, very competitive, um, if you're not very, very fast and at the beginning of the pack, this could be a bit frustrating because you do have to do some weaving. As at this point in the 5 and 10K, many people might be walkers or just really just for fun. Like no
You mean like
intentions of
zombies
finishing
from The
fast.
Walking Dead?
Yeah, some people kind of seem like that. But it was for me, it was more fun because more people could see the costume. And I mentioned I was playing the flute as I run, and I was kind of lazy and didn't prepare many Vietnamese songs. Normally, I try and prepare at least a few songs of the country I'm running in, um, but I didn't have enough Vietnamese songs, so I had to keep repeating the same 2 or 3 songs. And because I just kept running around different people, it didn't matter that I repeated the same songs. It was
Yeah.
fine. That was great. Um, but yeah, so that was very exciting. There was one point where suddenly all around me there were no people with a full marathon bib, and I thought I made a wrong turn um,
Hmm.
because there was a little arch that looked like a finish arch, and I thought, oh, did I just finish the 5K by mistake? I've only run 26K. But what it actually was is I guess another company had sponsored an arch in the middle, so they had like cheerleaders there cheering and giving high fives, and it was right for all races to pass through there. So that was very unique. But this race, another unique thing, also really, really supports cosplay, and they have a cosplay
Hmm.
prize.
Those are so fun.
And unfortunately, I did not get the cosplay prize this time. It was based on Facebook likes, and I have not used Facebook in a while. So I didn't get great results. But anyways, there were some great costumes. There was Superman, Batman, some fairies, some people in traditional like Vietnamese outfits. There was a samurai, and one guy had like giant wings, like on his back, like fake huge wings, which I guess looked really cool. But I think it definitely would have blocked and frustrated some people around him because
Hmm.
trying to weave around giant wings when he was in 5 or 10K just walking a lot of it. So I think people might get frustrated. But
Maybe
anyways,
that
it
was the
looked
point.
cool. Yeah, exactly. He was blocking the competition to help his friend.
Venting.
Uh, yes. There were two noticeable costumes I wanted to mention. One, I'm totally blanking on the name. It's a famous character from Spirited Away. The
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
um
The black and white things.
like yes, exactly. I'm totally blanking on the name. Famous guy. I have socks with this character too,
Kao
but
Nasi, no face.
yes, exactly. Yeah, so there was a, I guess someone had that with a, I guess, Vietnamese hat on top and great costume, very cool.
I think I saw
And
that guy.
there was, oh really?
Yeah, I saw someone wearing the exact same costume. Did he have a basket that he was carrying?
He did, yes.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. Otherwise,
Okay, he's
that's
in
a
pictures
huge
from this
coincidence.
year.
Yeah, wow, he did that again. It looked like he was struggling last year, but
Yeah,
apparently it was worth it. Okay.
and the best costume of my entire running life, my absolute favorite costume I've
Okay.
seen, someone was Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball, depending on your preference. Um, I really grew up on Dragon Ball Z, and I actually exactly 1 month before the race. This has some spoilers from Dragon Ball Z. This came out in 1989, so if this spoils something, I apologize.
I'm gonna cover my
Um,
ears.
there, 1 month before the race, I started rewatching and doing skipping and jumping, some kind of exercise while I watched, and I just got to a part where Piccolo, maybe he dies, and they're gonna use the Dragon Balls to bring him back. And just the day before this race, Gohan says, I will work hard to bring Piccolo back because I really respect Piccolo, and said something like that. He's like, I respect him as much as I respect my dad, Goku. 4-year-old Gohan said something like that. And then the next day, I'm running this race and I see Piccolo. And when I was a kid, I loved that character. My most inspirational high school teacher also was kind of a Piccolo figure to me. And that's another long tangent. But anyways, I was so happy to see him, and we ran together a lot of the way. But once the sun came up, he struggled a lot because he actually painted his skin, and that is so hot. If anyone has ever done a run in any kind of costume, it's very difficult. But if you paint your skin and keep running, that is really, really hot. So he did an amazing job, and I really respect Piccolo.
Well, that's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. That was a very travel heavy and running heavy episode. Thanks for listening.
And see you next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Wait, Dragon Ball Z? You're from Canada. It should be Dragon Ball Z. That's what we
And
call in
see you
Canada,
next
isn't
time on Dragon Ball Zedo.
it? Is that what they call it in Japan?
Uh, kind of like that. Yeah, that was very surprising. Not Z, but Zedo.
Yeah, because I guess if you call it Dragon Ball Z in Japan, it would be the same as Dragon Ball G.
That
Dragon,
makes a lot of
Dragon Ball
sense.
G.
Because
There
there's
we have it, folks. It's settled. It's Dragon Ball Z.
yes.